Before the attack on the McLain territory, Juan Douglas was speaking with Duke Jordan Volterman. Juan said that even though they were in a civil war over the succession, this was the time to unite and punish the traitor. His voice was heavy as he tried to sound confident, but there was desperation hidden in his words. He asked Volterman if he knew anything about the McLains, saying it would be better if they shared information openly. His words sounded like a request wrapped in pride, a plea pretending to be a plan. Volterman listened without speaking for a long time, his sharp eyes narrowed as he studied Douglas. Inside, he thought that Douglas had come begging for information because he had none, yet still dared to act arrogant. The thought disgusted him. When Volterman finally spoke, his voice was calm but full of mockery. He said he had not heard anything about the McLains' military strength changing much, and that it was probably still similar to when they defeated the elves. Hearing this, Juan Douglas became visibly happy. His face brightened and he lightly clenched his fist as if reassured. He nodded and said that must be right. Only a few months had passed since then, so the McLains had likely only increased their conscripts. He added that the main things to watch out for were the red-haired brat of the McLain family and those annoying weapons. Volterman suddenly cut him off and said that was not the real problem. His serious tone made Douglas stiffen. There was clearly more Volterman had not shared. Juan Douglas grew uneasy and quickly asked what he meant. His eyes twitched and his voice cracked slightly. Volterman leaned back and laughed arrogantly, telling Douglas not to pretend. The last people to fight the McLains were Douglas's own men, especially Wiccan. Volterman's cold gaze pierced him as he asked how a transcendent could have allowed the McLains to escape. Douglas was shocked by the question. His eyes widened and sweat ran down his cheek. He stammered that he did not know, saying Wiccan could be careless at times. He tried to dismiss it lightly, but his heart was pounding. Now in the present, the forces of the first and second princes had surrounded the McLains. Soldiers covered the land like a sea, banners waving and war drums shaking the air. Luther moved forward, his massive body like a moving mountain, shouting that he would break through the McLains' defenses. His deep voice echoed across the battlefield. Wiccan Kalia also advanced, his aura surging as he told his soldiers to trust the wind and move forward. The soldiers cheered, though fear could be seen in their eyes. On the eastern side of the rampart, the McLain army commander saw the Transcendents moving to the front to block arrows and bombs. He immediately understood the danger and ordered all units to prepare to fire. Laughing arrogantly, Luther said that repeating crossbows might work against normal soldiers but not against a Transcendent. His confidence remained strong, but then he noticed something. His laughter stopped and his expression changed. Seeing the endless rain of arrows, he wondered if there had ever been this many before. Luther swung his weapon to block the arrows, but he could not stop them all. Many arrows struck the soldiers behind him. Screams filled the battlefield as shields shattered and men fell one after another. On the northeast side of the rampart, Ronian ordered the Vigilante Corps to prepare to shoot. His eyes shone with determination as he thought the enemy would not have expected this. Giving crossbows to more than 10,000 civilians and training them had been his brother's idea. Thinking of this, Ronian felt proud, his chest swelling with admiration. Luther grew furious when he realized he could not block all the arrows. His blood boiled as he shouted that the wall could not stop him. He charged toward the moat by the wall. A McLain soldier shouted that a Transcendent was coming, and panic spread among the troops. Sir Clayton, holding his staff, stood firm and said this must not happen. His calm voice steadied the soldiers. The wall in front of Luther suddenly shook and transformed into a massive golem. Luther froze in shock, his eyes wide and his jaw tight as he stared in disbelief. The golem swung its arm and struck him with tremendous force, sending him crashing into the water with a massive splash that shook the moat. Luther raged as he realized the McLains were using the rampart itself to create golems. He cursed and said it was not over. Before he could rise, Sir Clayton cast gravity magic on him. An overwhelming weight pressed down like an invisible mountain, forcing Luther deeper into the water. Luther clenched his teeth as his lungs burned and he struggled to breathe. He realized that with this pressure he could not rise to the surface. His vision blurred as the gravity crushed him. Then Sir Clayton ordered the soldiers to fire at the half-giant in the moat, and arrows and bolts poured down, piercing the water around Luther. On the other side, when Wiccan Kalia sees Luther's condition, he narrows his eyes and says that Luther has fallen into a trap. Wiccan thinks that because of Luther's large body, gravity magic will affect him twice as strongly. Now that the second in command is forced on the defensive, Duke Volterman will have no choice but to step in personally to save him. Wiccan gives a cold smirk as he understands the situation clearly. As he walks toward the golem, Wiccan Kalia says that there cannot be many six-circle mages, and that this will be easy for him. His confidence spreads like a violent storm. One of the golems throws bombs at him. Laughing with confidence, Wiccan says that they really think this trick will work again. He releases his aura and creates a spinning vortex of wind that stops the bombs before they reach him. The bombs explode in midair, sending harmless sparks everywhere. Wiccan looks down with contempt, his aura roaring around him. He then calls out for Logan to come forward, his voice echoing like a challenge. Logan jumps down from the rampart, his sword shining as he strikes Wiccan with all his strength. Wiccan strikes back at the same time. Their weapons crash together with a loud thunder-like sound, forcing Logan to step back. Grinding his teeth in anger, Wiccan tells Logan that he fooled him well in the past. His voice is full of bitterness. Logan calmly replies that if they had not started this fight, the promise would have been kept. His voice is steady but sharp. Wiccan angrily tells Logan to stop repeating the same lies. As his anger grows, he suddenly notices something strange about Logan. Logan just collided directly with Aura. Wiccan wonders how Logan is unharmed. Aura is the power of destruction itself, and weaker forces should crumble before it. This is a matter of essence, not strength. Wiccan's thoughts race. He wonders if Logan is using a defensive artifact, but if that were the case, blocking aura again and again should be impossible. Deciding to finish Logan in this exchange, Wiccan charges forward and strikes with killing intent. To his shock, Logan blocks the sword strike once more. Even though it is filled with aura, sparks fly, the ground shakes, and Logan does not move at that moment. Wiccan realizes the truth. It is not an artifact. Logan McLain is facing aura with sheer strength alone. Wiccan's eyes narrow in disbelief. The fight between Logan and Wiccan continues as their blades clash again and again. Aura rages and the battlefield trembles. Logan struggles to block Wiccan's aura-filled attacks. His arms shake, but his gaze stays firm. Logan thinks that facing aura with pure strength does put great strain on his body, just as he expected. Since seeing Wiccan Kalia's aura in the last battle, Logan has learned how to avoid it, but that is all he can do. His own attacks cannot deal a fatal blow to Wiccan. Clenching his jaw, Logan realizes that he will have to go through with the plan after all. Seeing how desperate the battlefield has become and noticing Sir Clayton suppressing Luther with gravity magic, Duke Volterman finally moves. His cold eyes sweep across the field. In a deep voice he says that if one lives long enough one will eventually see anything. A small rural barony, barely known until recently, is now mocking the great powers of the nation. In the end, even he is forced to draw his sword. With a firm expression, Duke Jordan Volterman unsheathes his blade. The air trembles, as if the battlefield itself senses his will. With icy resolve he says that playtime is over. As the battle between the McLain family and the combined forces of the first and second princes continues, Huon Douglas watches the field with sharp, calculating eyes. He notices something very strange that immediately draws his attention. At first glance it seems that the second prince's army has suffered heavier losses. But in truth their soldiers are dying in even greater numbers. Huon quietly thinks that their situation is not so different from the first prince's forces. He wonders what Logan McLain is really thinking in the middle of all this chaos. When the two sides first declared war, their retainers were thrown into confusion, unsure of what actions to take. However, as often happens in times of crisis, they quickly calmed down and began searching for practical solutions. Among the many ideas suggested, two stood out. One was to strengthen the massive rampart on the new McLain plains, which could offer a strong strategic advantage. The other was a far more cunning plan, to create division between the two factions by taking advantage of their hidden ambitions. When the McLain strategist first proposed this idea, Logan and the others were taken aback by how bold it was. Speaking calmly and carefully, the strategist explained that he knew the wording might sound harsh. However, even if the forces of the first and second princes appeared united now, there was only one throne in the end. No matter how much the two princes' forces hated the McLains, was that hatred truly more important than claiming the crown itself? The strategist went on, explaining that while removing this thorn from their side was important, it would also be useful to take control of the bombs and crossbows. If they could cause heavy damage to the enemy at the same time, that would be even better. The McLains needed to carefully stir these feelings in the enemy, scratching at their hidden ambitions just enough to control them without seeming too aggressive. Logan looked confused and asked the strategist what he meant by that. With a sly smile, the strategist replied that for now they should focus on eliminating just one important person. It would be a decisive action that could change the course of the battle. Back on the battlefield, the intense fight between Logan and Wiccan Kalia continued. After trading several blows, Wiccan Kalia realized that no matter how he thought about it, Logan was not using any artifact. He found it hard to believe that Logan was facing his aura using only raw strength. By all logic, Logan's body and inner power should have been crushed by now. At that moment, Logan mocked Wiccan Kalia, saying he looked nervous because things were not going the way he expected. Suddenly Logan leapt into the air and released an enormous amount of force as if he were attacking with everything he had. Wiccan Kalia sneered at first, thinking Logan was being reckless. What could such a huge but careless attack really do, he wondered. However, his expression changed instantly when he sensed something was wrong. A massive force was rushing straight toward him. Logan seized that moment and threw a bomb, smashing Wiccan Kalia into the ground with devastating accuracy. Seeing their commander attacked, the soldiers rushed forward to help, but Logan had already predicted this. He threw bombs at them as well, shouting for them not to lose focus while skillfully moving across the battlefield. Logan noticed with satisfaction that Wiccan Kalia was climbing out of the moat without serious injury, just as he had expected. With contempt on his face, Wiccan Kalia stared at Logan. Logan, completely calm, mocked him again, saying he looked like a drowned rat. At the same time, just as Philip had predicted earlier, the McLain's forces launched a non-stop rain of bombs and arrows at the First Prince's army. If Huon Douglas had been watching the battle more carefully, he would have realized much earlier that his side was taking heavier losses. The momentum of the First Prince's forces had clearly slowed. With a little more pressure, Logan thought, the results would be truly satisfying. He ordered his soldiers to hold nothing back, telling them to use all their bombs and arrows and drive the enemy away without mercy. Just as the order was given, a terrifying fiery aura rushed toward the rampart. Huon Douglas and the others turned to look at the eastern wall and saw Jordan Volterman, the blazing sword, arriving on the battlefield. The moment he appeared, fear spread among the McLain's leaders. They immediately ordered the crossbow units to fire, hoping to slow him down. Jordan Volterman did not take the crossbows seriously at all. As he clenched his fist, a huge amount of aura gathered around him. It burst outward with overwhelming force, burning the arrows in midair and destroying the crossbow units from afar. Patrick McLain watched in shock as the arrows that hit the blazing sword's aura were swallowed by flames. He could hardly understand what he was seeing. His aura, it's like red meteors, Patrick whispered in disbelief. Sir Clayton sensed the danger and ordered a retreat, using gravity magic in a desperate attempt to slow the blazing sword. Instead of being troubled, Jordan Volterman looked even more excited, clearly pleased to face a true mage among the McLains. He spoke to Sir Clayton, asking provocatively, "Liberatio, you've reached it, haven't you?" Sir Clayton was startled by the question and by the pressure of Jordan's aura, and fear flickered in his heart. Seeing the soldiers frozen in shock, Patrick McLain shouted for them to throw bombs. But every attack was easily blocked by a massive hammer. The half-giant Luther had entered the battlefield, shielding the blazing sword from the bombardment. Calling him Your Grace, Luther asked Duke Volterman if he was all right. Volterman replied casually, asking whether Luther had really come because he thought the blazing sword might lose to these brutes. "I alone am enough here," he said confidently. He then ordered Luther to sweep through the other ramparts with the first prince's soldiers. Luther hesitated, stuttering nervously. That's not it. Something is wrong," he said, clearly worried. Volterman, curious, asked what was wrong. Luther scanned the battlefield and spoke in a tense voice. "I don't see the first prince's main forces. They're not here. It looks like they're retreating." Hearing this, Volterman's eyes widened in shock. Outside the rampart area, Juan Douglas and the first prince's forces were truly retreating. While laughing and mocking, Juan Douglas warned Jordan Volterman not to misunderstand the true purpose of this war. Through this conflict, their goals were to seize the McLain family's new weapon, drain the strength of the second prince's faction, and finally place His Highness the first prince on the throne. Jordan himself had volunteered to face the arrow barrage, and Juan Douglas remarked, "So let's not waste this chance." On the battlefield, Jordan Volterman, betrayed by the first prince's faction, clenched his teeth in anger. Alone, he faced the McLain Foss's endless attacks. The half-giant moved without mercy as his blazing sword clashed fiercely with the McLain troops, the battle continuing without pause. The very air seemed to shake under the weight of their power. The battlefield was swallowed by chaos, colliding strength, burning auras, and the thunderous roar of combat. From afar, Duke Volterman's troops raised an emergency flag. When Volterman noticed it, he was stunned. For a brief moment, his sharp eyes narrowed in disbelief, and then understanding struck him. He realized that Juan Douglas had already withdrawn, leaving his own troops in a dangerous situation. His jaw tightened as anger rose within him. He understood then that Juan, that crafty fox, would never suggest an alliance without hidden motives. He should have known from the beginning. Filled with rage, Volterman growled, "How dare Juan Douglas use me as an arrow shield?" His voice boomed across the battlefield like thunder. In fury, he slammed his giant sword into the ground. A violent flame-like aura burned outward, overwhelming the nearby McLain forces. The impact shook the earth, and the shockwave and intense heat spread rapidly. Sir Clayton's gravity magic was instantly disrupted. The air quivered, and dust and embers swirled like a storm. As the smoke slowly cleared, Luther's eyes fixed on Sir Clayton. Through the haze, he saw Clayton clearly, struggling to steady himself. Without hesitation, Luther charged forward, raising his massive hammer high. Each of his steps made the ground tremble, and the air shook from his strength and rage. Sir Clayton, exhausted from maintaining a sixth-circle spell for so long, could barely stand. His breathing was heavy, and sweat soaked his face. When he saw the half-giant Luther rushing toward him with killing intent, fear flashed in his eyes. He knew he could not survive that blow. At that moment, a brilliant golden force suddenly appeared and stopped Luther's attack in mid-swing. The golden light shone intensely, lighting up the battlefield for an instant. Seeing this, Luther's eyes widened in shock, and his hammer shook under the opposing power. Then, through the blinding glow, Logan appeared, standing firmly as he protected Sir Clayton. When Volterman saw Logan, he scoffed. "You again," he said irritably. "How did you get here so fast? Weren't you fighting the storm sword, Wiccan? Logan calmly met Volterman's blazing gaze. "I don't know," he replied simply. Wiccan suddenly ran off without looking back. Maybe something urgent came up. Hearing this, Volterman glared fiercely, his lips twisting into a dark frown, but he said nothing. In his heart, he admitted unwillingly that Logan McLain was indeed a troublesome opponent. However, his thoughts soon shifted to something far more serious. More worrying than Logan was Prince Roman, who was still in the barracks. If Volterman remained tied down fighting the McLain forces for too long, Juan Douglas would surely target the prince. This thought filled him with helpless anger. Grinding his teeth, Volterman raised his voice and ordered Luther to fall back. Then he firmly commanded all his troops to retreat at once. Seeing the sudden withdrawal, Logan shouted after them, "Do you think I'll just let you go?" His voice rang across the battlefield. He raised his sword and ordered his troops to focus their fire on the two transcendents. Explosions and flashes of light filled the air as countless attacks rained down. Volterman scoffed, calling them worthless. With a single powerful swing of his blazing sword, a wave of fiery aura erupted outward, swallowing the entire area and wiping out all incoming attacks. The flames burned fiercely, destroying every magical projectile before it could reach him. He then shouted for Luther to move ahead, his voice sounding like a divine command. Sir Clayton, still recovering, muttered in the face of that flame-like aura, "All projectiles are meaningless." Logan narrowed his eyes and replied, "I expected that to some extent, but not this much. As I thought, the blazing sword truly lives up to its name." Volterman turned toward Logan and said, "Before I leave, I want to ask you one thing. When you fought Wiccan, did you also use sixth-circle magic?" The question startled both Logan and Sir Clayton. Their expressions stiffened as they quickly understood what Volterman had realized. With an annoyed look, Logan asked, "Surely you're not asking because you really didn't know? Didn't Douglas tell you?" Hearing this, Volterman's face darkened as if the sky had collapsed on him. The truth struck him like a blade through the chest. Huan Douglas had been deceiving them from the very beginning, and Volterman's anger deepened. "Don't feel safe just because you managed to push back 2 factions," Volterman said coldly. "Your deaths have only been delayed." With those words, Duke Jordan Volterman turned and left the rampart. His blazing aura slowly faded as he retreated with his troops. Logan's father watched from nearby and spoke in a low voice filled with admiration. He said that the blazing sword faced every attack on its own and was the last one to retreat. Enemy or ally, he was truly impressive. Logan nodded in agreement. "Our plan is going well," Logan said. As expected, since Douglas's army suffered heavier losses, they gave up on the alliance and pulled back. From Volterman's earlier question, it seems the existence of Sixth Circle magic was kept hidden. The commander of the McLain Knights stepped forward and said, "The distrust between the 2 sides has finally come to the surface. It would be best if they fought each other and wiped themselves out." Logan gave a faint smile. "Then we'll make sure that happens," he said. His father glanced at him and asked, "So you're really going through with it?" With a calculating smile, Logan replied, "Yes, we'll move once night falls." The scene then shifted to the northern mountain outskirts near the second prince's camp. Inside a dim tent, someone asked a soldier, "Is the Duke stationed in the central barracks?" "Yes," the soldier replied. "To protect Prince Roman, the Duke is staying close to him." The tent flap swayed slightly in the cold mountain wind as the conversation continued. Soon after, Count Pamil Cherno of the second prince's army was introduced. His face was red from drinking and his movements were slow and unsteady. "Drunk," the count muttered. "The Duke must be feeling uneasy. After all, the first prince's forces had betrayed them without warning." He poured himself another drink, spilling some of it over the rim. "This was doomed from the beginning," he said bitterly. "We never should have made such a foolish alliance." Seeing how much the count was drinking, a nearby soldier hesitated and tried to stop him. "Count, please," he said. "We're at war. You should drink less." The count's eyes narrowed in drunken anger. Without warning, he threw the mug at the soldier's head and shouted, "Be quiet, who are you to give me orders?" The mug struck the soldier hard and he cried out in pain. "Your job is to make sure the enemy never breaks through the perimeter," the count shouted. "Defend this outer wall no matter what." Suddenly the soldier collapsed to the ground completely lifeless. The count's drunken haze cleared slightly as shock set in. "What?" he muttered. "I didn't throw it that hard. How could a knight fall from that?" Confusion and fear filled his eyes. "Someone," he called out, his voice trembling. There was no reply from outside the tent. The silence felt overwhelming. His heart began to race. "Why is no one answering?" he whispered as he stepped outside. What he saw made his blood freeze. All the soldiers guarding the tent were lying dead on the ground, their bodies still, their eyes staring blankly. It was a horrifying sight. "An assassination," the count whispered, shaking. "But these were elite knights. Who could have done this?" Before he could react, a dark figure appeared silently behind him. Before the count could even turn around, a cold blade pierced through his back. His body stiffened and blood spilled from his mouth. The assassin leaned close and muttered, "Drinking while on guard duty. No awareness at all." The count collapsed to the ground dead as the assassin disappeared quietly into the night. Some time later, the second prince was informed that an intruder had appeared outside the barracks. A pale and trembling soldier reported, "Count Cherno and 5 elite knights have been killed." Hearing that even elite knights had been slain, the second prince was filled with shock and fear. "What is happening?" he asked unsteadily as he looked at the Duke. Volterman's expression grew cold. He asked the soldier, "Were there any witnesses?" The soldier hesitated, then answered, "They say the intruder escaped incredibly fast, as if riding on the wind itself." The moment Volterman heard the word wind and realized that someone capable of killing 5 elite knights alone existed, his expression changed completely. Every instinct in him warned of grave danger. The second prince, filled with fear, asked, "Duke, do you have any idea who it could be?" Volterman's thoughts moved quickly. "Wiccan Kalia or Logan McLain. For now there are 2 men," he muttered softly. Then he remembered Douglas's betrayal, and his eyes grew colder. "No, there is only one man. It must be the Storm Sword, Wiccan Kalia." When the second prince heard the name of the transcendent warrior, his body trembled, but Volterman spoke in a steady voice. "Do not worry, your highness," he turned to a soldier and ordered. "Send for the top-tier knights immediately. Choose those who are fast and agile." "Yes, my lord," the soldier replied and rushed away, still shaken. The second prince asked, "What do you plan to do, Duke?" Volterman's eyes were calm and calculating. "If we do nothing," he said, "it will hurt your highness's reputation and lower the soldiers' morale." The prince clenched his fists. Then he added angrily that hiding a mage and deceiving them after knowing the truth must be punished. Traitors must be shown the consequences. Volterman smiled, sharp and cold. "The prince's order will be carried out," he said. Outside the tent, the second prince's strategist stood quietly, listening to everything. His face was dark. "Things are moving in a strange way," he whispered to himself far away. Under the moonlight, a shadowy figure ran swiftly across the dark plains. The wind howled around him. As he disappeared into the night, a faint smile appeared on his face, full of satisfaction. As if everything had gone exactly as planned at the western wall of Aegis Fortress, Logan arrived and thought this should be enough to shake off any pursuers. Eileen spoke stiffly. "You did well," Logan replied. "There's no one chasing us. You can speak normally." Eileen became flustered, her rigid military posture relaxing at once. She quickly explained that she was afraid of being discovered and worried that acting too familiar would reveal how deeply she cared about him. Logan then said, "But you're on duty very early," noticing the unusual timing. Before Eileen could think of an excuse, the soldier behind her, a large and friendly man who clearly understood the situation, spoke up with a grin. "She didn't wake up early. She stayed up all night waiting." Eileen's face turned bright red, the blush spreading up her neck. Without thinking, she kicked the soldier's leg hard, a quick and trained movement from long sparring sessions. "I just happened to wake up early today," she insisted, trying to regain her calm and professional tone. Then she turned to Logan and asked seriously, "More importantly, how did the operation go?" Logan replied. "There were no problems with the attack itself. If this causes deeper conflict among the enemy and breaks their alliance completely, that would be the best result." Without thinking, Eileen said, "Though I doubt it will be that easy." She immediately realized her mistake, became flustered again, and quickly apologized. "That was too pessimistic of me," she said, bowing her head slightly. Logan looked at her kindly and said, "It's fine, we can't afford to be overly optimistic right now." He paused and looked out over the quiet, cold fields around the fortress, thinking carefully. "For now, we should watch their movements." The scene then shifted to the southern McLain Plains, inside the central barracks of the First Prince's army. Wiccan Callie asked, "It's been 2 days since the last retreat. Shouldn't they have moved by now?" His voice showed his impatience as the delay was wearing on everyone. Huan Douglas sighed and replied, "Not yet. The Second Prince's forces are refusing all communication. That confirms how serious the breakdown is." Wiccan asked again, "Could the rumor be true that their barracks were attacked last night?" The thought of such a bold attack spread unease through the room. The First Prince slammed his hand on the campaign table, the loud sound echoing in the tense silence. "They abandoned the war because of that, pathetic fools," he shouted with contempt. "I'd rather attack them myself and become king." His ambition burned fiercely, blinding him to the need for cooperation. Hearing this outburst, Huan Douglas could only sigh. He was used to royal tempers, but his sigh carried clear frustration at the short-sighted pride of his commander. Suddenly a soldier rushed into the tent out of breath and said, "The outer area of the barracks has been attacked." The sudden news shook the First Prince and made him gasp. Stopping his angry speech at once, Douglas immediately asked in a firm, controlled voice, thinking only about the situation, "What about the casualties?" The soldier struggled to calm himself and replied, "The count who led the outer defenses and 5 senior knights were killed." The seriousness of the loss was clear right away. These were not ordinary soldiers but important and experienced leaders. Hearing this, Wiccan's face filled with real concern, and he quietly said, "That's a huge loss." Recognizing the damage to their strength, filled with fresh anger, Huan Douglas slammed his fist on the table. Unlike the prince's earlier outburst, his movement was controlled and threatening, showing his deep frustration as a commander. He said, "I understand what happened," and then bluntly called Jordan Volterman an idiot, blaming him for the recent failures. Douglas then told Wiccan that they would move out together at first light. If Volterman kept refusing to communicate, Douglas would go there himself and settle the matter, making it clear that he would force unity with his authority. The next morning, when Volterman saw Huan Douglas arrive in person at his camp, he could hardly believe it. His pride was hurt by the public visit. He came himself, Volterman thought. Duke Douglas must be losing face. He mistook Douglas's action for desperation instead of determination. Angrily, Volterman confronted him in a rough, accusing voice. "What nerve do you have?" Douglas answered with a dark, unsettling smile that carried no warmth. "It seems your communication channel isn't working, so I came to fix it like a friend should." He then pushed further, speaking deliberately. "Isn't refusing to talk and sulking like a child just because you're angry going a bit too far?" These mocking words made Volterman explode with rage. Gritting his teeth, he hissed, "How dare you say that?" Is he afraid of being exposed? He betrayed them and ran away. His accusations came out harsh and uncontrolled, showing how deeply he suspected betrayal. Suddenly, Volterman's large sword was covered in a fiery aura. Heat shimmered in the air, clearly showing his overwhelming combat power. He charged at Douglas with a wild, furious strike. The attack was stopped instantly. Wiccan Kalia stepped in front of Douglas, showing fierce loyalty as he took the blow. Volterman shouted at him, straining with effort, "Move aside. Do you want to die?" The power of the fiery strike was too strong. Wiccan could not hold on and coughed up blood, stumbling back from the force and heat. At that critical moment, Douglas spoke coldly, his voice sharp and icy. "Put your sword away if you don't want to lose a valuable subordinate." As he spoke, Douglas released a surge of ice magic, freezing Volterman's massive half-giant subordinate in place almost instantly, showing an equally terrifying level of power. Seeing his subordinate in danger, Volterman grew deeply worried. He realized the balance of power had suddenly changed. A tense and dangerous standoff formed between the two dukes, each holding the other's key person in a deadly situation. Neither side was willing to retreat or show weakness. Then a calm and steady voice broke the tension from behind them. "Calm down." A man stepped forward. It was Luchin, the strategist of the Second Prince's forces. As he entered the open space, his presence brought a sense of clear thinking and control. He said firmly, "This is not the time for you to fight among yourselves." Volterman was shocked to see him. "Why did you follow us here?" he demanded. Luchin answered simply, "This didn't seem like an ordinary matter, and it looks like coming here was the right decision." Seeing Luchin made Huan Douglas uneasy, and suspicion quickly rose in his eyes. "If this isn't ordinary, what can you do about it?" he snapped. "Are you going to side with Volterman and attack us?" Luchin replied in a calm and steady voice. "Of course not. I only want everyone to look at the situation calmly." His composed presence spread a sense of control, forcing both dukes to lower their emotions if only for a moment. After hearing Luchin's reasoning, Volterman slowly let go of his fiery grip and allowed Wiccan to stumble away. He then turned to Luchin and asked, "What is he trying to say?" Luchin appealed to their common sense and reminded them why they had formed this temporary and fragile alliance in the first place. "Isn't it all because of Logan McLain?" he said. The name seemed to hang in the air, instantly becoming a shared threat that overshadowed their personal conflicts. When Douglas heard the name Logan McLain, he also fell silent for a long moment of thought. Then he released the half-giant and the ice binding him cracked and fell apart. Lucien continued, his voice growing firmer as the importance of his words increased. He explained that Logan McLain had turned a small rural manor into a power that could rival a count's household. With skills like that, and with the Sword Duke supporting him, Logan had gathered neutral forces and was secretly planning a rebellion. That was why they had to stop him before he grew any stronger. That had always been their original goal. Lucien paused, letting the weight of Logan's achievement sink in, pointing directly at Douglas and Wiccan. Volterman objected. However, I can't trust these people. His long-held resentment was still clear. Lucien then revealed the real strategy behind everything that had happened. The betrayals and raids, he explained, were meant to create conflict inside the Alliance. That was McLain's plan. He clearly described how the enemy had been manipulating them all along. After hearing this explanation, Volterman was deeply shocked. The truth struck him painfully, and he finally understood that the problem was not a real internal conflict, but Logan McLain's schemes. Looking straight at Wiccan Kalia, Lucien concluded, Logan McLain has played with people many times before. He is despicable and must not be underestimated. Then he added, please think calmly. The first enemy we must defeat is the McLain family. His clear logic and sharp strategy calmed the tense situation, reminding the Dukes of the much greater and more dangerous enemy they faced and restoring the fragile unity of the Alliance. The next day, the scene shifted to the McLain rampart. A soldier blew a horn and its deep sound echoed across the plains and into the fortress as a warning. He reported that a large army was approaching from the east, urgency clear in his voice. Hearing this, Logan and his father rushed to the rampart to look out. Logan was shocked when he saw that Volterman's and Douglas's forces were advancing together. It showed how effective Lucien's counter-strategy had been. Logan wondered aloud if they were trying to prove that their alliance was unbreakable. His father, worry written on his face, asked if their operation had failed. The sight of the united army suggested that their attempt to create conflict had not fully succeeded. Logan, however, looked ahead with a slight calculating smile and answered no. After a short pause, he added that Wiccan Kalia and Luther Kyle were in terrible condition. Their injuries were severe, especially the internal ones. His intelligence network had been accurate once again. Hearing this, the McLain Knight commander felt relieved. If superhuman fighters had suffered such serious internal injuries, then the two factions must have truly clashed. He asked if that was really the case. Smiling, Logan confirmed that it was. Even he was amazed, thinking that it was strange how they could fight so fiercely and still reconcile afterward, but that it made the effort worthwhile. Logan then turned to his father and the Knight commander and asked a crucial question. Could they hold out against a superhuman? Both were startled by how directly he asked, knowing how terrifying such enemies were. Logan continued, his voice firm and determined. If they could buy him enough time with everything they had, he would personally cut down the two princes. It was a bold and dangerous plan that depended entirely on the McLain forces holding the line long enough for Logan to carry out his decisive strike and remove the royal claimants from the war. On the battlefield, Volterman ordered all troops to charge. He dismounted from his horse and told Douglas that he would lead the attack himself. He warned Douglas that he hoped there would be no foolish betrayals this time. Douglas mocked him, saying Volterman looked troubled and had grown old. With a fierce glare, Volterman dismissed the remark as nonsense. Then without hesitation he charged straight toward the McLain rampart, his armor clashing loudly with each step. Logan, his father, and the Knight commander were all stunned when they saw the flaming sword approaching, its fire flickering like a vengeful spirit as it drew closer. Logan's father urgently tells him to go at once, his voice shaking with both authority and worry. Logan nods, agreeing that there is no time to waste. Using his force, he leaps from the rampart and speeds away, moving as if he were riding the wind itself, a blur of resolve cutting through the tension of the battlefield. The Knight commander, standing beside Logan's father, respectfully asks his lord not to worry. He says the young lord is the fastest among them, and it is only right for him to go and strike the princes while there is still a chance. With a troubled expression, Logan's father replies that his son's absence will be deeply felt in this battle, and that they will have to endure with all their strength. Understanding the truth of these words, the Knight commander silently nods. As the enemy forces rush forward like a violent tide, one of the soldiers shouts a warning. They are entering McLain's attack range. Almost immediately, McLain's soldiers begin firing their crossbows, bolts slicing through the smoke-filled air toward the advancing enemies. Calling Victoria, his junior sister, Greek, the eldest disciple of Sir Clayton, tells her that it is time to begin part 2. Victoria agrees without hesitation. As they start casting their spell, huge golems begin to rise from the rampart wall, stone grinding loudly against stone. The enemy soldiers freeze in shock and disbelief at the sight of the towering stone figures. When the golems start hurling bombs with thunderous force, one soldier screams for everyone to take cover. The enemy troops try to push forward, but suddenly a wide stretch of green land turns into a thick, muddy swamp. It traps the soldiers' legs and drags them down. Shouts of confusion and panic spread across the battlefield. Every student of Sir Clayton stares in amazement as their senior brother Greek successfully casts Swamp, a spell most believed he could never use. Greek himself is overwhelmed, nearly in tears, as he struggles to control his emotions. He has truly cast earth magic, powerful and alive, right before their eyes. Seeing this, the commander of the McLain crossbow unit smiles slightly and tells Sir Clayton that Greek must have been holding that spell back for a long time. Sir Clayton feels deep pride and happiness at his student's success. However, Victoria quickly reminds Sir Clayton and the Knight commander to save their praise for later. The battle is not over yet. Pulling himself together, Greek shouts to his fellow brothers, "Let's feed those bombs to the enemies who can't move." At once the golems throw more bombs at the helpless soldiers stuck in the mud. One enemy soldier looks up in terror as a bomb flies toward him. His eyes go wide as he screams no, knowing death is only moments away. Just before the bombs hit, they all freeze in midair, hanging like shining orbs of death. The soldiers stare in disbelief. It is Huon Douglas's ice magic. The temperature drops sharply, and Douglas's cold voice echoes across the battlefield, warning the soldiers not to fall for such simple tricks again. Victoria watches in shock. The ice barrier is strong enough to withstand even Liberatio's power. Greek panics and clutches his head in frustration. That artifact had been crafted with great effort, and now it is useless. Addressing Huon Douglas as Your Excellency, Wiccan says they cannot rely entirely on the Second Prince's army, so he will go out himself. Douglas, his face tense with concern, asked what Wiccan thinks he can do in his current state. Jordan's aura, he warns, is extremely violent. If Wiccan were not an aura master, he would never be able to use force again. Wiccan lowers his head and apologizes for acting without thinking. Douglas sighs deeply and tells him that since he has better eyesight for scouting, he should use it now. He asks where Logan McLain is. Wiccan narrows his eyes and scans the smoke-covered battlefield with his wind aura. After a moment, he shakes his head and says he cannot find Logan anywhere. Douglas frowns and mutters to himself. Jordan is charging straight ahead, yet Logan McLain has completely disappeared, grinding his teeth. Douglas growls that Logan must be planning something. He then orders Wiccan to support him while he draws Logan out. Meanwhile, the McLain Night Order commander keeps firing crossbows at the enemies. Suddenly, his lord Patrick McLain speaks in a low and heavy voice, saying that he feels ashamed. The Knight Commander looks at him in shock and asks what he means. Patrick turns to him and says that because they served a foolish man, they suffered more than they should have. Now, in that man's later years, he has challenged the strongest force in the kingdom. Ignoring his lord's bitter words, the Knight Commander shouts and asks if this is really the time to say such things. He tells Patrick to focus on bringing down even one more enemy. Patrick is startled by Henkel's sudden outburst and tries to reply, but Henkel refuses to listen. From the rampart wall, as he looks at Volterman's blazing aura, Henkel quietly wonders if his lord truly believes what he just said. In the next instant, the flaming sword leaps onto the rampart. Volterman charges straight toward Patrick McLain and Sir Henkel, his massive blade wrapped in roaring flames. Both Patrick and Henkel freeze in terror as the inferno rushes at them. When Volterman strikes, a deafening explosion swallows the rampart and shakes the wall to its core. From a distance, Logan sees the explosion and feels a wave of dread. Has Volterman already reached the wall, he wonders. He's faster than I expected. If they fight him now, there will be unavoidable sacrifices. With a grim resolve, Logan clenches his fists and decides he must hurry. He has to strike down the princes and end the war before more lives are lost. Suddenly, a cold and frightening aura stops him. Ahead of him, a huge orb of ice shines with a deadly glow. Logan recognizes it at once. It is the same giant ice orb as before. If it explodes, the entire area will be completely destroyed. Grinding his teeth in anger, Logan sees Huon Douglas standing in his way, his freezing aura spreading like the death of winter. Without hesitation, Logan charges toward the giant ice orb, ready to destroy it before it is too late. But then he notices something strange. A swirling wind aura surrounds the orb. When he looks closer, he realizes it is Wiccan Kalia's magic. Wiccan's wind aura is tightly fused with the Frost Mage's ice orb. Logan understands that this combination will not be easy to cut through like last time. Even so, he cannot retreat. Not now. If he used the same method that stopped Wiccan's aura before, then maybe, just maybe, he can do it again. Suddenly, Wiccan appears in front of the ice orb. His cloak flutters like storm clouds as he speaks calmly. He tells Logan to give up and asks if he heard the sounds behind him. Behind Logan, the screams of dying soldiers echo across the battlefield. Jordan Volterman, the flaming sword, swings his massive blade without mercy, cutting down McLain's soldiers as if they were paper. Screams, dying cries, and desperate shouts fill the air. Blood and ash are carried by the wind. As Volterman continues his slaughter, Wiccan coldly tells Logan that he is already defeated. Logan's eyes widen as he slightly turns his head. He sees his younger brother, his fiancée, Victor, his sister, and Sir Clayton's students all fighting desperately. None of them can stop the advance of the flaming sword. Even his father, the proud Patrick McLain, is unable to hold Volterman back. Despair creeps into Logan's heart, but he forces himself to stand firm. Nearby, Sir Clayton trembles, his eyes wide with disbelief. He mutters in a broken voice, asking how this could be happening. At that moment, Sir Henkel approaches them. His armor is burned and blackened, but his eyes remain steady. With a serious look, he turns to Sir Clayton and says that he has a request. The scene shifts to events from the past, seen through the memories of Sir Henkel, the Night Order commander. Two soldiers speak quietly, one asking how many hours have passed. The other replies that it has been maybe 2 or 3 hours. Young Lord Patrick is shown to be strict and ruthless. He is sitting on the back of a young Sir Henkel while calmly cleaning his sword. Patrick asks Henkel to tell him what his fault was. Clenching his teeth, Henkel answers that he scolded a knight from another viscount's house. Patrick sighs and asks what he means by that. He asks if Henkel is proud of ignoring his lord and acting on his own. Henkel does not back down and says that they insulted his lord first. He asks how he could stand there and listen while his lord was being insulted. As Patrick gets off Henkel's back, he says that he, a mere baron's son, became a senior knight, and that such envy and jealousy are almost cute. With a warm smile, Patrick reaches out his hand and thanks Henkel. Later, Henkel learns that his lord went to the Viscount, who was furious and wanted to punish Henkel personally, and that Patrick bowed his head and knelt before the Viscount. At that moment, Henkel decides that his lord should never be treated that way. He swears to help Patrick restore McLain's former glory and rise even higher. He decides that he will see his lord reach that place. Years pass and Henkel becomes the commander of the Knight Order. Still, McLain remains a small royal barony, and Patrick is only a senior knight. Everything seems unchanged. Then things begin to shift when Logan McLain approaches Henkel and greets him, saying that from that day on he will join the Knight Order's training. From that moment, everything starts to change. The story returns to the present at the McLain rampart. The half-giant Luther declares that he will stop the bombardment and orders the soldiers to climb up while their commander Duke Volterman attacks the wall. Logan's younger brother Ronian charges with the flaming sword, but Volterman swings his blade. The impact sends Ronian flying and he crashes into the rampart wall. Seeing this, Patrick is filled with worry. Patrick tells Eileen that he warned them not to clash directly with an aura. Eileen asks how they are supposed to bring down the flaming sword without clashing with it, especially when the young lord is tied down by the First Prince's army. Wiccan tells Logan to admit defeat while there is still time. He says the prince might kindly end things by cutting down the McLain house's line, or Logan can choose to die here with his men. Logan remains silent for a moment. Then he finally speaks and says no, he cannot give up because he has a promise to keep. Logan's words clearly surprise Wiccan Kalia. The scene goes back to the moment when Logan asked his father and the Knight Commander to hold off the superhumans while he cut down the two princes during the opening they created. Logan's father said, "Isn't he the only one among us who can fight a superhuman? This is asking too much." At that moment Henkel said, "Let's try to hold them back." His words surprised Patrick. Before Patrick could respond, Henkel asked, "Is it wrong just because the young lord asked us to do it?" Sir Henkel's words caught Logan off guard. In his heart, Sir Henkel thought, "I believe in the changes the young lord has brought." Back in the present, as they face the flaming sword, Patrick McLain and Sir Henkel charge forward together. Patrick orders the soldiers not to stop firing the crossbows and throwing bombs. Suddenly, Patrick notices something. He sees Sir Henkel rushing alone toward the flaming sword and tries to stop him. Meanwhile, in the battle between Logan and Wiccan Kalia, Logan says, "The people of my domain believe in me without doubt. It wasn't always like this. I made it that way." Wiccan asks, "What are you trying to say?" Logan tightens his grip on his sword and replies, "Even now, my people believe I will bring victory, and they are holding on with their lives." Wiccan says, "You created a meaningless death. Do you feel no guilt?" Logan answers, "No," which shocks Wiccan. Logan charges forward and says, "I don't have time to be held back by that." Logan thinks to himself that he promised everyone in McLain a future different from his past life. Because of that, he must grow stronger and faster than anyone else, without stopping. There is no time to rest. He swings his sword, flames covering his body, and uses the divine sword's secret technique, the fourth form scorching heat strike. He strikes Wiccan. Wiccan barely manages to block and thinks that this is the end. It is the same skill that blocked his aura many times before. At that moment, Wiccan's internal injuries from Volterman suddenly flare up. Logan's strike cuts the giant ice orb in half and seriously injures Wiccan Kalia. Determination shines clearly in Logan's eyes. Sir Henkel once thought the young master of McLain was nothing but a walking disaster who caused endless trouble, but his thoughts changed when he saw the young lord endure impossible training. Logan then gathered mercenaries and armed them with outrageous weapons. He even brought in a group of mages from somewhere. He picked up a slave child, made him a knight, and later even took him in as family, and now there was even a fiancé. Such a strange group could not be found anywhere else on the continent. Sir Henkel used to worry about what would happen to McLain and how far it could rise. Sir Henkel snaps out of his memories as he coughs up blood. The flaming sword drives its blade into him, and fiery aura spreads everywhere. Patrick McLain looks on in horror, unable to do anything, unable to save his friend and comrade. Sir Henkel groans in pain. Seeing this, Eileen and Ronian rush forward to save him. However, Volterman releases his blazing aura, stopping them in their tracks. The heat is so intense that Eileen and Ronian cannot move even an inch forward. Defeated and waiting for death, Sir Henkel thinks that it is strange. His body is in terrible pain and the core of his power is completely destroyed, yet his senses feel sharper than ever. He can clearly feel his lord's helplessness. At that moment, Sir Henkel says, "Right now," surprising Volterman. He shouts again, "Right now, Sir Clayton." Sir Clayton instantly casts a spell and many golems appear and surround the flaming sword. They restrain him, leaving him unable to move. Volterman becomes terrified when he sees Sir Henkel aiming a crossbow at his face. As Sir Henkel prepares to fire, Volterman's eyes widen as he sees death approaching. Sir Henkel releases the arrow and it pierces Volterman's head. A massive explosion shakes the rampart, which Logan notices from afar. He immediately understands what has happened and his eyes fill with tears. Sir Henkel has sacrificed his life for McLain. Patrick McLain calls out to his old friend, Sir Henkel. His voice, filled with urgency and deep worry, echoes across the broken rampart. At the same moment, Ronian notices a shadowy, desperate figure, Jordan Volterman, trying to escape through the thinning smoke and swirling dust left by the battle. A familiar wave of anger and frustration burns inside Ronian. Driven by instinct and the sacrifices they had just made, he rushes forward, determined to stop Volterman, prevent his escape, and finally end his presence here. But just as he commits to the charge, Ronian is suddenly stopped mid-step. An icy, overwhelming aura spreads from a figure standing directly in his path. The chilling presence freezes Ronian in place, leaving him unable to take even a single step forward. Juan Douglas had blocked him. calm even in the chaos. Douglas speaks with open disdain, saying that Volterman looks completely pathetic as he runs away, only a weak shadow of the Duke he was meant to be. Ronion's frustration only grows. Meanwhile, Logan finally reaches the badly damaged rampart, carefully moving through the debris and remaining smoke. Ronion quickly tells him what has happened, his voice tense as he confirms that Jordan Volterman has escaped. He declares that he will immediately gather the knights and chase after Volterman and his flaming sword, determined to make up for the earlier failure. Logan, his older brother, stops him and says there is no need. The response shocks Ronion, who did not expect Logan to cancel such an important pursuit. Logan then explains that he will chase Volterman himself. This has become personal, a responsibility he feels only he can carry. He does not say it out loud, but he knows that sending all the knights would leave their defenses dangerously weak. Before he can leave, another urgent concern rises. Logan asks, his voice filled with fear, about Sir Hankel. Then Logan sees the truth. Sir Hankel lies on the ground completely still, covered in blood and badly injured. The sight of his father's lifelong friend in such a state is almost unbearable. Logan nearly breaks down as his usual composure starts to crack. He rushes to his side and whispers, "What happened here?" Patrick McLain, looking helpless, is already sitting beside his old friend. Staring at Sir Hankel's pale face, he tells Logan that he does not fully understand what happened either. He is still trying to process the sudden violent turn of events. He wonders aloud why Hankel suddenly charged forward into the line of fire without warning, going completely against their plan. Sir Clayton hesitates, clearly struggling with what he is about to say, but finally speaks. He explains that at the height of the battle, Sir Hankel made a terrifying request. He told them that when he gave the signal, they must hold Duke Volterman with all their strength, even if only for a brief moment. The reason was grim. Sir Hankel planned to use the bomb on himself as a last desperate act to ensure Volterman's destruction. Logan absorbs this horrifying truth and responds with cold logic mixed with growing dread. He points out the terrible consequence. If Sir Hankel had detonated the bomb at such close range, the entire area would have been destroyed. At that silent, frightening moment, Sir Hankel begins to cough. The weak, rough sound breaks the silence and proves that he is still alive. Seeing him breathe, Patrick McLain feels a surge of relief and hope. He immediately orders the strongest healing potion to be brought at once. But the relief does not last long, as the seriousness of Sir Hankel's injuries is impossible to ignore. Logan gently stops his father. Thinking fast, he uses a resource he had been saving. He offers a better option, the Bracelet of Regeneration, an extremely rare and powerful artifact to be used on Sir Hankel. Logan explains in a firm, confident voice that if they use this now, they might even be able to save Sir Hankel's badly damaged right arm. Losing a limb would be a terrible fate, especially for a knight of his skill, and Logan is determined to stop that from happening. Just as Logan is about to place the bracelet on the knight's wound, Sir Hankel weakly raises his hand and stops him. This sudden refusal shocks Logan. Survival and full recovery should have been the clear priority. Sir Hankel, speaking softly but with strong resolve, says that his battle ends here, his part in the fighting is over. But the fight of the McLain family is not finished. He tells Logan to take the bracelet, reclaim it, and use its power to open a future for McLain. It is a passing of responsibility, a final act of trust placed in the hands of the young lord. Logan nearly breaks down, tears burning behind his eyes. The meaning of Sir Hankel's final words and his selfless sacrifice cut deeply into him. Still, Logan quickly regains his composure, knowing that a true leader cannot fall apart in a moment like this. With steady emotion and determination, Logan promises Sir Hankel that he will see it through. He swears to fulfill the duty given to him, but adds one desperate request: Sir Hankel must stay alive. Understanding the weight of Logan's promise and the sincerity of his concern, Hankel nods weakly. It is a silent agreement. With his path now clear and the knight's sacrifice echoing in his heart, Logan finally turns and leaves to chase Volterman, urgency burning in every step. At the same time, a soldier arrives out of breath, carrying the highest-grade healing potion Patrick had ordered moments earlier. Watching Logan depart and then looking toward his friend, Sir Hankel apologizes to his lord, saying that he acted on his own again. He knows he has often taken matters into his own hands out of loyalty, and this was the final and greatest example of that. As Patrick gives him the powerful potion, he tells Hankel to be quiet and rest. There is no more time for discussion. In a rough voice hiding deep emotion, Patrick adds that he will not thank him this time. We see Logan moving forward with fierce focus, completely set on capturing Volterman. The urgency of the chase is clear in every stride. Suddenly, someone calls out to him from behind, a voice he recognizes immediately. Victor comes running after him, breathing hard from the sprint. Trying to catch his breath, Victor asks if Logan is chasing Volterman, then quickly offers to go with him. He feels it is his duty to help his leader at such a critical moment. Logan firmly refuses and tells Victor to stay. The situation demands it. One of the enemy leaders has escaped, which means the enemy forces are now unstable. Logan reasons that Huan must be anxious as well. To regain control, the enemy will likely attack more fiercely. He predicts that Douglas, who usually focuses on defense, will be forced to move to the front line to hold things together. Logan gives clear orders. Victor, Ronion, and Eileen must stay on the rampart, no matter what. Victor accepts the order immediately. Still confused and concerned about Logan going alone, he asks how Logan plans to chase Volterman. Logan explains that he has a theory, a careful guess based on Volterman's desperation and current weakness. In this situation, there is only one place Volterman would run to. Logan tells Victor with quiet confidence that even if he is wrong, it is not a place where he would be at a disadvantage. He trusts his judgment and his ability to handle whatever happens. Placing a firm hand on Victor's shoulder, Logan looks at him with complete trust and says, "I will leave it to you." It is a heavy responsibility and a true test of Victor's leadership. As Logan turns and surges forward again, Victor calls out after him with unwavering loyalty, "We will wait." As Logan runs, those simple words sink in. He had always believed Victor would never leave Victoria's side. Hearing "we will wait" meant more than just Victor, it meant the others and perhaps even Victoria herself. The realization weighs heavily on him. His burden has grown not because of the chase but because he now carries their hope and trust. He must succeed. While running, Logan begins to think intensely, playing out the situation in his mind. If he were Jordan Volterman, where would he go? He carefully considers the state of the battle. The war is no longer turning out as well as the Duke had expected. The allied forces Volterman depended on could not be fully trusted. Their loyalty was weak and based on conditions, not belief. On top of that, they were suffering from unexpected injuries and serious setbacks. Because of this, Volterman's main goal had to be winning as quickly as possible, ending the war before his fragile support completely fell apart. Just as he focused on a possible destination, Logan suddenly heard a sound behind him. It was a small but disturbing thud that instantly put him on edge. Right after that, something rolled across the ground and stopped near his feet. Volterman had thrown the severed head of the first prince toward him. It was a horrifying and deliberate act meant to break Logan's mind as much as shock him. Volterman's voice echoed through the darkness, filled with twisted amusement as he asked Logan, "Could you pick that up?" He then added mockingly, as if talking about a misplaced object, that it was a gift for a close friend, but he had dropped it. Logan stood frozen, staring at the prince's head. There was no denying the truth of the murder. The Duke's sudden and open cruelty was overwhelming. Volterman slowly stepped out of the shadows and into the light, his presence deeply unsettling. He laughed wildly, clearly unstable and manic. Staring at Logan with sharp, triumphant eyes, he said, "I knew you would come here." He had expected Logan to chase him, seeing it as proof that their fates were tied together. In the harsh light, Volterman's face was clearly visible, badly scarred and twisted, showing signs of recent pain and growing madness. He continued to mock Logan, saying that Logan was no different from anyone else. He suggested that Logan was predictable, guided by the same old sense of honor that could easily be used against him. Logan answered the mockery with cold calm, smiling darkly, without a trace of fear. He congratulated Volterman. He returned the Duke's hateful stare and reminded him of the neck he had failed to cut before. Even after sending a highly skilled assassin in the past, Volterman had still failed, and only now had he taken the prince's life with his own hands. Logan kept going, turning the moment into a psychological attack of his own. He said he also knew a skilled assassin. Then he asked a question meant only to provoke. Should he introduce that assassin to the flaming sword? He followed it with the detail he knew would hurt the most. That same assassin had once killed the border count who served the second prince's faction. The meaning of Logan's words hit Volterman all at once. He completely lost control and burst into mad laughter, the sound rising into a frightening high-pitched scream. Then a terrible realization struck him. It had never been some unknown figure weakening him through assassinations. It had been the man standing in front of him the entire time, Logan. With the same calm tone, Logan asked, "Surely you knew, didn't you?" It was both a challenge and a claim that Volterman had already suspected the truth deep down. Volterman forced himself to stop laughing and admitted it reluctantly. He said no, he hadn't known for sure, but he had always had his suspicions. He then explained his cold political thinking. Instead of questioning McLain, who was already seen as an enemy by the public, it was more useful to let things continue and use the situation as an excuse to destroy Huan. At that moment, Logan finally understood the true political game Volterman had been playing. He realized how carefully planned the Duke's actions had been. That was why Volterman had deliberately pushed the first prince's army into battle. It was a calculated move meant to weaken his enemies while placing the blame on Huan Douglas. It was a clever, ruthless, and completely immoral strategy. Holding the flaming sword, Volterman spoke with a tired sense of finality. He said that he and Huan had a long, exhausting history, a connection that always stood in the way of total victory. Then, kicking the first prince's head aside with contempt, Volterman declared that it ended here. The prince's death marked a clear line, closing that chapter of politics for good. Logan took the chance and asked a direct question, pulling the focus back to the two of them. Why not deliver the gift yourself and finish everything once and for all? He said this was the best path for the kingdom. He framed their coming fight as the final step needed for the future of the entire realm. Hearing Logan speak with such a serious, almost patriotic tone genuinely surprised Volterman. He remarked that Logan did not look like a patriot at all, and that made it even more unexpected, especially coming from someone known as a public enemy. Speaking about the kingdom's future, Volterman continues, his face twisted by a dark obsession. He says he cannot wait to see Huan's expression when he receives it. He openly admits that he wants to witness his rival's ruin with his own eyes. Then the Duke falls into a brief moment of self-pity, complaining that fate is truly cruel, always placing new obstacles in his path whenever he tries to rise higher. Logan, having allowed the exchange to finish, finally makes his move. He prepares to fight Volterman, his sword already drawn, the polished steel shining faintly in the dim light. With a final taunting and wicked laugh, Logan replies, matching Volterman's dark tone, saying that they are both the same in this regard. Both men see themselves as constantly struggling against a harsh and unfair fate. A deep, heavy silence settles between them. The tension grows almost unbearable, thick and suffocating. A sudden cool breeze blows between the two warriors, stirring dust and debris like the calm before an approaching storm. When Volterman sees Logan's completely determined face, free of fear or doubt, he grinds his teeth in anger. He can no longer endure Logan's presence, his mockery, or the fact that he stands in his way. Letting out a harsh guttural sound, Volterman charges forward, his flaming sword lighting up the darkness as he shouts for Logan to disappear. Logan, driven by his promises and the sacrifices already made, charges toward him as well. The final confrontation begins, not just a chase but a collision of two opposing fates. Their swords crash together instantly, metal screaming as it meets metal. The impact sends powerful shockwaves through the air, throwing up a violent storm of dust and noise. In that single explosive moment, both Logan and Volterman are completely focused. This time, they intend to end everything. A fierce battle continues as their blades collide again and again, shaking the air around them. Sparks burst out each time steel strikes steel, and the sound of their blows rolls across the ruin, clearing like thunder. In a sudden and savage attack, Volterman forces Logan backward, sending him skidding across the torn ground. The force of the strike rattles Logan's bones, but he quickly regains his balance. After clashing swords once more, Volterman speaks in a sharp, mocking voice. He says that he once believed Logan only defeated Wiccan because Wiccan was already injured, but now he sees that was not the only reason. Narrowing his eyes, Volterman studies Logan with cold curiosity and asks how he managed to block that earlier aura. His voice carries both disbelief and irritation, as if Logan has broken rules Volterman thought could never be challenged. Logan answers with a cruel smile that fails to fully hide the pain of his injuries. He mocks Volterman, pointing out that he looks badly hurt himself. Then, with dangerous confidence, Logan asks if Volterman is not afraid of ending up like Wiccan Kalia, broken and defeated. Volterman ignores the taunts, dismissing them like the buzz of an annoying fly. His blazing aura flares like wildfire as he coldly asks why he should be afraid at all. Once he shows Huan the prince's head, he says, everything will be finished. His voice is filled with certainty and the arrogance of someone who has climbed too high to imagine falling. He asks Logan if he truly believes someone like him could inspire fear. Logan tilts his head slightly, a hint of amusement in his eyes. In a calm yet unsettling tone, he asks Volterman if he is truly certain it will end there. Logan's voice grows heavier as he speaks of what he has seen on the battlefield. He says that when this war ends, another will simply begin. Countless refugees have already been created, and countless talented people have died or been forced to wander. With a sudden burst of overwhelming force, Logan lunges forward and slashes at Volterman, asking if he has any way to undo the human cost of this endless destruction. Volterman scoffs, unable to believe Logan is trying to lecture him about war. His face twists with anger and contempt as he presses forward. As he advances, his flaming sword, wrapped in a terrifying aura, seems to speak for him. In a booming voice, he demands to know whether Logan even understands how to fight and still gain something from it. Who must be convinced and how? How would Logan ever make a prince give up his crown? Even the Sword Duke failed to do that. Does Logan truly believe he can succeed where others could not? With a furious roar, Volterman swings his sword, sending a massive flame-like aura crashing toward Logan. Logan struggles to block the attack, his muscles shaking under its fiery weight. Each strike feels stronger than the last. The battle's intensity keeps rising, the ground cracking beneath them as trees burn or collapse under stray waves of aura. The world itself seems to tremble, as if afraid of what is about to happen next. From the McLain rampart, Logan's younger brother Ronian sees a massive explosion rise from the distant forest. Red and orange light flash across the sky, forming an unnatural storm of power. Victor also turns to look, immediately knowing where it came from. The southern forest. That is where his lord went. His lord is fighting Jordan Volterman, the flaming sword himself. Worry and fear swirl through Victor's mind, but before he can think further, Luther the half-giant charges at him from behind. Without any warning, Luther swings his huge hammer and yells at Victor for looking away in the middle of battle. Victor reacts too slowly. He never notices the half-giant approaching. The massive hammer crashes into him with crushing force, throwing Victor hard to the ground. Seeing this, Ronian and Dame Eileen rush forward to protect Victor. But Luther roars and slams his hammer into the ground before they can reach him. The earth splits apart beneath them, collapsing suddenly. Ronian and Dame Eileen lose their footing and barely avoid falling to their deaths. Sir Clayton arrives at that moment. His eyes widen as he sees the ground breaking apart. Staying calm, he quickly casts a fifth circle spell, sealing the shattered earth in seconds. The broken ground stabilizes instantly under his magic. Luther blinks in surprise. He did not expect anyone to counter his attack so fast. He admits out loud that the spell is troublesome. Before Sir Clayton can reply, something feels wrong. A cold sensation crawls up his body. He turns his head slightly, but it is already too late. His hand and half of his body suddenly freeze solid. Ronian and Dame Eileen freeze as well, shocked that a 6th-class mage like Sir Clayton could be caught so easily. From far away, Sir Clayton's trembling eyes focus on a distant figure. He cannot believe it. Huan Douglas. Huan Douglas is aiming directly at him from that distance. The precision and timing are terrifying. At the same moment, Huan Douglas also notices the huge explosion in the southern forest. His expression changes. Though no one can tell what thoughts are moving through his calculating mind, the scene shifts back to Logan and Volterman. The flaming sword is slowly but clearly gaining the advantage. Logan feels his strength draining away. He cannot believe Volterman still has so much power despite being badly wounded. Volterman swings his sword with overwhelming force, each strike stronger than the last. With a smirk he says that Logan's earlier attack was impressive, but only because Logan had to use everything he had just to block Volterman's strike. Time is not on Logan's side. The longer the fight continues, the clearer it becomes that he is struggling. His arm trembles. Each block makes his breathing rougher and heavier. The flaming sword's relentless attacks are wearing him down. Volterman laughs and says the explosion earlier must have told Huan that the first prince is already dead. In a cruel voice he asks Logan what he thinks Huan Douglas will do next. Logan answers through clenched teeth. Huan Douglas will go after the second prince's head, just like Volterman. Volterman laughs even harder, his voice echoing wildly through the burning forest. He agrees, saying that even if defeat were certain, Douglas would never sit back and let Volterman win. They were always like that, always trying to climb higher than the other, always reaching further upward. Then Volterman asks Logan if he is not the same. The question catches Logan off guard. He stares at Volterman in shock. The flaming sword keeps talking, as if ripping open his own chest full of memories. He says that at first everything he did was for his house and for the kingdom. He ran forward thinking only of that, and before he realized it, he had climbed very high. Volterman's voice trembles as madness slowly rises to the surface. When his daughter gave birth to a prince, he realized there was still more above him. Still more to climb, more to take. His expression twists as he loses control. Like a madman, he shouts that he can climb even higher. So why should he stop? Why should he ever stop? With wild fury, Volterman charges at Logan again, screaming for him to answer. Logan barely blocks the flaming strike. His blade shakes and his entire arm trembles. Then something feels wrong. Sharp pain shoots through his body. He realizes that an earlier blow has broken his left arm. The bone has cracked under the strain of battle. Volterman laughs like a madman when he sees Logan's pain. He calls Logan arrogant, saying Logan talks as if he has no greed of his own. Yet behind the scenes, Logan gathered neutral forces and planned to place the third prince on the throne. Logan responds that the third prince is better than the two fake princes above him. This truth breaks something inside Volterman. His calm shatters and he attacks Logan with even greater fury. One strike comes so close that it almost pierces Logan's neck. Calling Logan an arrogant brat, Volterman demands to know if Logan has seen the future or something like that. He closes the gap again and delivers another crushing blow. Logan barely manages to block it. Volterman admits that he cannot deny the two princes are frauds, but the king, he says, is only a symbol. It is people like them, like Volterman and Logan, who truly shake the throne and control it from the shadows. Logan grits his teeth in rage and tells Volterman to stop talking nonsense. His voice cracks, not from fear but from deep frustration. Volterman snarls and with burning anger asks Logan why the Sword Duke, Logan's master, is not helping him. That single question strikes Logan to the core. For a brief moment, doubt cuts into his heart like a blade. Volterman notices this crack and does not waste the chance. He slams a brutal kick into Logan's side. The force sends Logan flying, his body smashing hard into the ground. Logan struggles to get up, coughing and shaking. Volterman laughs loudly, almost drunk with joy. He says the Sword Duke was different, a truly noble man. The moment the Sword Duke sensed Volterman's ambition, he cast him aside without hesitation. Then Volterman mocks Logan, saying that from the looks of things, Logan too has been abandoned by the Sword Duke. Logan's thoughts drift back to his master. He remembers his words, his harsh lessons, and his warnings. He recalls his master once saying that Jordan Volterman was once very close to how Logan is now. But how can Logan be sure he will not end up the same way? His teeth clench as his mind fills with memories and doubt. He thinks of all the men he has seen, greedy, arrogant, and obsessed with themselves, men who lost their humanity while chasing power. Logan hates people like that. The fight snaps back into focus. Volterman raises his sword, ready to finish Logan. Suddenly he stops. He senses that something is wrong. The ground begins to shake, growing stronger with every second. Logan steadies himself. Something on his wrist starts to glow. The healing bracelet activates. A bright, radiant light surrounds Logan and flows over his battered body. His wounds close, his bones heal, the pain fades away, fresh strength fills him. In his heart, he quietly asks his master to trust him. Across the battlefield, Huan Douglas, Wiccan Kalia, Luther Kyle, Ronian, Victor, Eileen, and Logan's father all freeze. In the distance, a white flag rises, bearing a majestic eagle crest. The Sword Duke has arrived. Even the battlefield itself seems to bow to his presence. The strongest warrior of the kingdom, the most honorable and transcendent figure, the Sword Duke, Logan's master, steps onto the field with his soldiers. His presence alone brings silence. His aura crushes despair. He declares that just this once he will trust his disciple. Now Logan must prove that he is worth his master breaking his vow for. A grand and awe-inspiring moment unfolds. The Sword Duke, a living legend and unshakable pillar of the kingdom, enters the battlefield. Huan Douglas and Wiccan Kalia stand frozen, their eyes wide with shock as they stare toward the horizon. The impossible has happened. When they look behind them, they see the banners of the Sword Duke and the famous Esperanza Knight Order. They emerge like a dark storm cloud promising destruction. Both terrifying forces are moving straight toward McLain. The realization hits them like a physical blow. Their flank is exposed and the most dangerous man on the continent has arrived. Before the Sword Duke came to this chaotic battlefield, an important conversation took place safely within his territory. His knight commander stood before him, bowing with respect as he reported the current situation. He explained that both fighting sides had left behind only enough troops to hold each other in check while their elite forces gathered to attack McLain directly. Hearing this, the Sword Duke covered his face with his hand and rubbed his temples in frustration. He let out a deep sigh and said, "They've finally caused trouble. Those idiots, how can they act so recklessly?" Seeing the stress and anger on his face, his wife, who stood nearby, grew worried. She stepped closer, her eyes filled with concern for the heavy burden he carried. At that exact moment, a small and cheerful presence broke the tension. His little daughter peeked out from behind her mother's dress, her eyes shining with curiosity. Stella, the Sword Duke's daughter, walked toward him with unsteady but determined steps. She reached out with her tiny hands, grabbed his leg, and looked up at him, calling him Abba. In an instant, the Sword Duke's frustration vanished. He looked down at her, his expression softening from anger to pure affection. The Sword Duke lifts his daughter into his arms with ease. He is amazed at how much she has grown and says that she only just learned to walk, and now she is already running so well. Stella giggles, feeling safe and warm in his embrace. She stretches her arms up happily, smiles at him, and calls the Sword Duke Daddy. As he holds Stella close to his chest, a deep thought comes to his mind. He thinks about his disciple. He admits to himself that Logan is foolish, reckless, and always getting into trouble. But without Logan, he would never have been blessed with such a wonderful daughter. It was Logan's actions that led to this life and this family. The Sword Duke's eyes soften, and a rare gentleness replaces the sharp gaze of a warrior. But the peaceful moment does not last. The duties of a duke call him back to reality. He looks up and his expression hardens into that of a commander once again. He orders his Knight Commander Lewis to gather the knights and cavalry immediately. The sudden command shocks both Lewis and his wife, as they did not expect him to act so quickly. The Sword Duke looks at his wife with regret and determination mixed together and apologizes, saying that he will be gone for some time. His wife meets his gaze and sees his resolve. She forces a warm smile to hide her worry and tells him that she understands. She promises that she will wait right there with their precious daughter. Back in the present, the battlefield is thick with tension. When Luther the half-giant sees the Sword Duke, excitement fills him. His blood boils as he senses a true challenge. He grins wildly and says that this is far better than dealing with worthless opponents. Abandoning his current enemy, Luther charges straight toward the Sword Duke, completely ignoring his fight with Ronian. To him, the other soldiers are no more than ants compared to the prey that has just appeared. Seeing Luther leave in the middle of their duel, Ronian shouts in confusion and anger, demanding to know where he is going. Ronian moves forward, trying to stop him, but a heavy hand grips his shoulder. His father stops him and slowly shakes his head. Looking over the chaotic battlefield, his father speaks with grim certainty, saying that from this point on, the superhumans on the battlefield will be handled by the Sword Duke alone. Ronian stares at his father, unable to fully grasp the power his words suggest. He asks if such a thing is truly possible, his voice unsteady. The battlefield grows louder and more violent as the Sword Duke charges forward with his troops. The ground shakes beneath the hooves of the warhorses. With a simple wave of his hand, he commands the knight order to attack. Both Juan Douglas and Wiccan Kalia notice the change in tactics immediately. Instead of attacking head-on, the Esperanza Knight Order moves in from multiple directions. They are being surrounded. Realizing the danger, Douglas urgently orders his soldiers to form a defensive formation, shouting for shields and barriers to be raised. But ordinary tactics mean nothing against absolute power. As the Sword Duke draws his blade, the sound of it leaving the scabbard echoes like a death bell. Enemy soldiers freeze in terror, their hearts seized by raw fear. Just the sight of the Sword Duke standing alone before them is enough to make them tremble. They stare at him, wondering what he is about to do. The answer comes instantly. His sword becomes wrapped in aura, and a blinding light bursts from the blade. The immense energy pouring out of him twists the air, and even gravity seems to bend. Enemy soldiers are lifted into the air, unable to resist the crushing pressure. Their feet leave the ground and panic fills their faces. Before they can understand what is happening, the Sword Duke's horrifying sword intent sweeps through them. It is not a slash but complete destruction. His intent tears them apart in midair, erasing them without mercy. It is a brutal display of overwhelming power. The Duke does not even flinch after slaughtering them. His face remains cold and distant, as if he has done nothing more than brush away insects. Yet in the middle of the carnage, he suddenly senses that something is wrong. The air shifts. Juan Douglas takes advantage of the moment and launches an ice spell at the Sword Duke, a powerful spell meant to stop all movement. The temperature drops sharply as ice spreads over the Duke's limbs, freezing him in place. Seeing this opening, the enemies surge forward. Both Luther and Wiccan Kalia charge at the Sword Duke at the same time, sensing blood and opportunity. Both the half-giant and Wiccan scream as they rush at the Sword Duke, putting all their strength into one combined attack meant to kill him in a single blow. The Duke, however, remains calm as they close in. There is no fear in his eyes, only boredom. At the final moment, just before their weapons strike, the ice breaks apart. The Sword Duke easily cancels both Wiccan's and Luther's attacks. His sword moves faster than they can even see. With a smooth counterattack that flows like water, he badly injures them. Blood sprays into the air as they are thrown back by the force, smashing into the ground with bone-breaking impact. The Sword Duke then dismounts from his horse, his boots landing in the mud with a heavy thud. He looks down at the three powerful warriors struggling to stand and says mockingly, "If the three of them can't handle this, maybe they should call Jordan too." Luther, holding his wound, spits out blood. Enraged, he turns on his ally and shouts at Douglas, asking, "Is he even using his magic properly?" The Sword Duke does not look restrained at all. The ice magic did nothing except annoy him. Douglas, breathing heavily and covered in sweat from casting the spell, asks Luther, if the Sword Duke were restrained, would he even be able to fight him? Douglas understands the frightening truth. Magic barely works on a monster like this. He tells Luther to stop fooling around and focus. Fear starts to creep into Douglas's voice, staring at the Sword Duke, who stands like an unmoving mountain, untouched and unaffected. Douglas asks him what happened to his vow of neutrality. Did that brat Logan enchant him, or was his vow always this weak? The question lingers in the air. The Sword Duke lets out a deep sigh, heavy with exhaustion. He looks at them with pity and determination and says that if he lost that disciple while doing nothing he would never be able to face his daughter. Hearing this, Douglas grows even more frustrated. He tells the Duke that breaking a vow for a disciple means he has truly grown old. Desperate to survive, all of them charge at the Sword Duke again, shouting at him to just retire. Meanwhile, in another part of the battlefield, the fight between Logan and Volterman continues. Logan is battered, his armor dented, but something is different. Because of the healing bracelet he wears, Logan's wounds begin to heal quickly. Cuts close, bruises fade, and strength returns to his limbs within seconds. Volterman watches in shock as both Logan's outer and inner injuries heal right in front of him. It makes no sense. Volterman immediately rushes at Logan, swinging his weapon wildly and demanding to know what trick he used. Their weapons clash again, steel striking steel. This time, however, Logan is not being pushed back. His stance is steady and his attacks are heavier. Volterman grits his teeth in anger and disbelief. He cannot accept that someone he thought was weaker is now overpowering him. Worse still, all of Logan's injuries are gone, wiping away everything Volterman fought for. Then Volterman notices his own condition. He realizes that he is the one who is exhausted. His breathing is rough, his arms feel heavy, and his mana is draining fast. In desperation, sensing the battle slipping away, Volterman releases all of his fiery aura. Flames burst from his body, burning the ground around them. Sensing a change, Logan retreats and creates distance. He feels the air grow heavy, pressing down on his shoulders. The presence is far away, coming from another part of the battlefield, but he can clearly feel it. It is the Swordmaster's weighted blade. Logan's eyes widen as he understands. A smile spreads across his face. Seeing Logan suddenly smile, Volterman grinds his teeth in rage. He swings his massive sword at Logan with enough power to split a building, shouting, "What are you laughing at?" Logan instantly blocks the attack, knocking the giant sword aside. He keeps laughing, a deep and genuine laugh in the middle of a deadly battle. Logan realizes his master was right, just as he always said and feared. Those who taste power will always seek more power. It is the curse of the strong, but Logan also understands something else. People chose to believe in him. He is not chasing power for its own sake. In the chaos of the battlefield, a deep realization fills Logan's mind. Once he was a brute who only understood violence. Now he needs to prove himself. He must honor the trust others placed in him. Every choice weighs heavily on his shoulders, but that weight now gives him strength. Logan's sword becomes wrapped in aura as he drives Volterman back with a burst of new power. At last he reaches the weighted blade, the same state of mind and strength that his master possesses. At that moment Logan screams, his voice cutting through the chaos of war, saying that he cannot abandon his responsibilities. No matter what happens, he cannot run from them. Hearing this, Volterman completely loses control. The pressure finally breaks his sanity. He shouts at Logan to stop talking and releases all of his fierce flame-like aura. His body becomes like a living fire, and he tells Logan to burn away. Volterman rushes toward Logan with clear killing intent, but suddenly the air around him grows heavy and thick as if it is pressing down on everything. Breathing becomes difficult. It feels as though time itself has stopped. Logan is fully absorbed in his sword. He sees nothing except the blade and feels only the flow of energy within it. As Volterman closes in, Logan remains completely focused, reaching a state of perfect concentration. When Volterman strikes, bringing down his blazing weapon, Logan avoids it with a movement so small and precise that it looks like he teleported. In that instant, time freezes. The flames, the flying debris, even the sounds of battle all stop. Volterman notices this and is filled with terror. True fear grips his soul as he realizes the world has halted around him. Logan descends from the sky like a shining star, his entire body glowing with brilliant light. His sword shines with a radiant aura, lighting up the dark battlefield. He has reached the realm of a swordmaster. Logan finally unleashes the technique he has been striving for, the fourth form of the divine sword, blazing heat slash. He strikes Volterman and the attack connects with overwhelming heat born from the divine technique. Volterman begins to burn away, his armor melts, his aura is consumed, and his body breaks apart under the holy flames. A massive explosion follows, lighting up the battlefield and announcing the rise of a new master. The world is swallowed by a blinding inferno as Volterman is struck by the divine sword. The heat is so intense that it feels less like fire and more like the wrath of a god. As his flesh burns and his vision dissolves into a blur of orange and white, confusion tears at Volterman's mind. What just happened? The events refuse to make sense. When did Logan get above him? One moment, Volterman was in control, and in the blink of an eye, the boy was somehow above him, raining down destruction. Then a horrifying realization hits him. Why is his aura being overwhelmed by the power of someone he thought was weak? Volterman, the master swordsman, feels his own strength collapse as it is devoured by the sheer density and violence of the strike. The explosion is so devastating that it can be seen from the McLain rampart. A towering mushroom cloud of mana and debris rises into the sky, shaking the earth itself. From afar, Logan's younger brother Ronian stares at the distant blast with wide, shaking eyes, deeply worried. He grips the stone of the rampart so tightly that his knuckles turn white. Logan's fiancée Eileen feels the same fear. She watches the smoke rise, her heart pounding, silently praying that the man she loves has not burned himself away along with his enemy. At the center of the crater, the dust slowly settles. When the terrifying flames from the divine skill fade, Logan stands among the embers, breathing heavily. He quickly reviews what happened and realizes it activated at the perfect moment. He is thinking about Lux, his sword's special ability, time acceleration. It is a skill he cannot use repeatedly because it puts an enormous strain on both his body and the blade. That is why he saved it for the very end of the duel. He combined it with the fourth form of the divine sword, Scorching Slash, a technique that lets him move at 3 times his normal speed and cut through aura as easily as paper. With this overwhelming combination, even Jordan Volterman, the legendary blazing sword, could not avoid it. As the smoke fully clears, Volterman is revealed to be on his final breath. His armor is shattered and his body is broken. Logan walks toward him, his long shadow falling over the defeated warrior, creating a cold and terrifying image of victory. Looking down, Logan tells him simply that he lost. Volterman stares back with empty eyes. The fire that once burned in his gaze is gone, replaced by the dull darkness of approaching death. Even so, his pride remains. With a dying blood-filled cough, he speaks in a final taunt. He says that Logan took down the first prince and that the second prince will soon fall without him. He acknowledges Logan's terrifying efficiency and admits that Logan truly succeeded in placing the third prince on the throne, something no one believed was possible. He admits that Logan truly is the Sword Duke's student, as the similarity in their power cannot be denied. Still, he whispers that things will not go entirely as Logan hopes. With a bitter cough, Volterman asks who will listen to such a young prince, hinting that political chaos is far from over. Despite his bold words, deep down he is afraid of Logan. He has seen the monster hidden beneath the skin of the young lord. Logan remains silent for a moment, thinking over the dying man's words. He does not comfort him, nor does he argue. Tightening his grip on his sword as the leather creaks in his hand, Logan finally asks Volterman, "Are those your last words?" Volterman is now at the edge of death. His breathing is weak, only a faint rattle in his throat. He looks up at Logan, who is standing above him and blocking the light of the sky. With his last strength, Volterman curses Logan, calling him a bastard, and tells him to move aside because he cannot see the sun. He wants the light to be the final thing he sees, not the face of the man who killed him. In a tragic moment, Logan grants him that mercy. He strikes one final time and his blade cuts away the last trace of life, ending Jordan Volterman, the wielder of the blazing sword, on the rampart. The battle continues without pause. The sound of clashing steel and screaming men fills the air. A massive golem moves through the battlefield, unstoppable, slaughtering enemy soldiers. Its stone arms swing with terrible power, crushing armor and breaking bones. One soldier, watching his comrades die, cannot believe the golem defeated 3 knights at the same time. It goes against everything he knows about war. Another soldier tries to raise their broken morale, shouting at him not to be afraid. He says the golem's weakness must be its mana stone and that destroying the core will stop it. But a third soldier, his voice shaking in terror, says that this golem does not have a mana stone at all. The truth horrifies them. A golem without a core has no weakness. Before the soldier can even react, the golem turns its huge body and smashes him, sending his corpse flying across the battlefield. From a higher position, Sir Clayton watches in excitement and asks the nearby troops if they saw that. His eyes shine with pride as he explains that this is not a constructed golem, but a summoned one. It is the power of a 6-circle mage. He raises his staff and releases all of his summoned golems at once. The ground shakes as more stone giants rise from the earth. At this point, the enemy soldiers are filled with fear towards Sir Clayton and his golems. They realize they are not fighting men but a force of nature. Overwhelmed by this power, they hesitate and freeze in place. Amid the chaos, Eileen moves through the battlefield with deadly skill. She approaches an enemy soldier from behind, and in one swift motion, her blade flashes. The man dies before he even realizes she is there. Eileen senses that their enemies are shaken by the arrival of the Sword Duke and that the tide of battle is turning. Still, her thoughts drift away from the blood and death around her. She hopes that if the young Master Logan can return safely, that would be the best possible outcome. Her heart aches with worry as she thinks about his duel. While Eileen is lost in these thoughts, an enemy soldier begins to sneak up behind her. He moves carefully, gripping his weapon tightly. His greedy eyes look over her armor and her sword. He thinks she must be an elite of McLain, wearing fine gear. Greed overcomes his caution. He decides to take her head and earn a great reward for killing a high-ranking officer. He licks his lips, already imagining the gold. Just as he prepares to strike, confident it will be an easy kill, a shadow falls over him. Suddenly, Logan appears and steps down on the soldier with crushing force. The man is slammed face first into the ground and pinned instantly. Logan stands on top of him, carrying a terrible trophy. The head of the blazing sword, sealed inside a bag. After crushing the soldier like a simple stepping stone, Logan looks down at the movement under his boot and asks in confusion, "What was that?" When Dame Eileen sees Logan emerge from the smoke, her face brightens at once. All her worry disappears, replaced by pure relief, and she rushes toward him. Seeing that Logan is safe, her shoulders relax as the tension drains from her body. Logan looks back at her, his expression soft, and says he is glad she is safe as well. In the background, beneath Logan's boot, the face of the enemy soldier who dreamed of a great reward is now flattened and forgotten in the dirt. Dame Eileen lets out a long sigh, releasing all the stress she had been holding in. She says she could see the forest exploding from where she stood, and the blast was so huge that she feared the worst. She admits that just watching, unable to help, made her feel like she was losing her mind. Realizing how exposed her feelings sound, she grows a little embarrassed and tries to steady herself. She begins to ask Logan if he had fallen again like last time, referring to the battle with Wick and Kalia when he was badly injured. but before she can finish, Logan gently interrupts her. He looks at her and tells her that she must have been very worried about him, when Logan suddenly speaks and hits the truth directly. Dame Eileen's face turns bright red. She blushes so hard that her face looks almost as red as the blood on the battlefield. She panics and starts stammering, trying to take her words back. She says that it's not like she didn't worry about him, just not enough to say it that way. She is clearly trying to protect her dignity. After that, she starts mumbling nonsense, saying that everyone was worried back then, and that she was no different from the other soldiers. Logan cuts through her rambling with a gentle smile that reaches his eyes. He thanks her for believing in him. Hearing that, Eileen feels like she might cry. The tension of the battle and the relief afterward hit her all at once. She sniffs, holding back her tears, and complains that he can't say something like that so casually. She says it isn't fair to her heart. Logan nods and says he will arrange something for them later, maybe a date or at least a proper talk once everything is over. But then his expression turns serious again. The war is not finished yet. Logan turns away from her and walks to the edge of the fortification. He stands on the rampart wall and looks down at the chaotic battlefield below. Taking a deep breath, he shouts, his voice strengthened by his aura. He declares, "All who stand on McLain's soil, listen carefully. I, Logan McLain, have taken the heads of Reuter von Grandia, the first prince, and the blazing sword, Jordan Volterman." He lifts a bloody bag for everyone to see. At this announcement, the enemy leaders, Huon, Douglas, Luther, and Wiccan, are stunned. Their faces go pale, especially when Douglas sees blood dripping from the bag. Fear grips him as the truth sinks in. Logan continues shouting, declaring that their coalition has failed and ordering them to stop fighting. The soldiers are in disbelief. The news spreads through their ranks like a shockwave. One soldier completely loses control. His hands shake as he grips his weapon, his teeth clenched in anger. He says there is no way a kid like Logan could defeat an aura user like their lord. He refuses to believe that the legendary blazing sword fell to a boy. Suddenly, a terrifying sword pressure crashes down on them. The air becomes heavy, making it hard to breathe. The Sword Duke steps forward, his presence towering over the battlefield like a giant. He announces that anyone who refuses to accept defeat can come to him. He will deal with them personally. The soldiers cannot endure the overwhelming pressure coming from the Duke. Their will breaks. One by one, weapons fall to the ground. Voices begin to shout their surrender. Someone declares that House Fractal will fight no more. Then House Rowan follows. After that, House Anthony announces it will also lay down its arms. The coalition collapses in moments. Huon Douglas stands frozen in the middle of the battlefield, looking foolish and alone among surrendering troops. He lets out a nervous, almost hysterical laugh. Everything has been ruined because of Logan McLain. He cannot understand how a single boy destroyed their entire plan. The Sword Duke looks at the mage and asks, "What about him? Will he keep fighting?" Douglas thinks it over, quickly calculating his chances. He realizes they are 0. He drops his staff, the wood clattering against the stone, and says that he surrenders. Wiccan and Luther stare in disbelief. Their leader has given up. Luther angrily asks if Douglas has no shame. As the spell Douglas had placed on the Sword Duke finally fades, the Duke looks at him and says calmly, "A wise choice." Without any warning, the Sword Duke suddenly attacks Wiccan and Luther. He moves so fast it is hard to follow, releasing a frightening blade force. In an instant, both of them are knocked unconscious, either by the flat of his blade or the crushing pressure alone. Standing over their fallen bodies, the Duke casually remarks that the two youngsters needed a nap. Huon Douglas is horrified by what he just saw. His eyes are wide as he realizes that the old man knocked out 2 aura users the moment the spell was gone. The gap in power is impossible to bridge. Douglas begins backing away from the battlefield. He plans to retreat for now and live another day, promising himself that he will someday get revenge on Logan McLain. Before he can finish the thought, the Sword Duke stops him. His voice is cold as ice as he says surrender. Douglas freezes. He doesn't understand. He already surrendered. He should be spared. The Sword Duke steps closer and says he can read Douglas's thoughts clearly from his face. The betrayal, the lack of regret, and the intent to harm Logan in the future are all obvious. The Duke raises his sword, the blade shining coldly. He tells Douglas that he never intended to let him or Jordan live in the first place. Douglas tries to beg for mercy, opening his mouth to plead, but the Sword Duke cuts off his head in one smooth motion. As the head falls, the Duke says he will see him in hell. With that brutal act, the battle finally ends. Silence falls over the McLain lands, heavy with victory. Logan runs toward his master and calls out, "Master." His eyes are nearly filled with tears as he says, "Master, you came." In that moment, he is just a boy again, seeking his mentor's approval. The Sword Duke is also relieved to see his disciple alive and well. A small smile appears on his face, but true to his nature, he suddenly smacks Logan on the head. He grumbles that Logan is going to give him a hernia with all this trouble. Rubbing his chin, the Sword Duke asks, "What now?" Still rubbing the sore spot on his head, Logan straightens up. His expression changes from that of a student to that of a leader. He says he will mobilize their forces and search for the second prince. After that, he plans to march on the capital. The Sword Duke is slightly surprised by such a bold plan. Logan looks toward the horizon with a serious expression and says that this civil war must be ended once and for all.